Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Tavern Talk. I think it's episode 10. In this one, we'll be discussing some dragons this evening. I am Ben, also known as Meta Mongoose, over in the Crick Cats Discord. And with me tonight, of course, is Sasha and Fia and Lynn. And we're all going to be picking out some bits and pieces of some favorite dragons from D&D, or some ancient and interesting historical dragon lore, or even maybe some fun third party stuff. We'll dive into that. But for mostly, we're like I said, we're here to just we did dungeons last time. We built a dungeon from scratch, and since it is Dungeons and Dragons, it only makes sense that we do the dragon half this time around, and see how it goes. So, with that in mind, does anyone have any kind of overview thoughts on how dragons make you feel before we dive in? For me, the dragon was pretty iconic. It's one of those big meaty lizards that breathes the fire and makes the knights fall down. One of those classic European quest things. So it's kind of always a big draw. Big scary lizard. Kind of like a dinosaur, but cooler.
I kind of just always liked how D&D kind of expanded on dragons and just kind of added more and more, and it gives you a different perspective of those creatures in general. Kind of gives you a new way to look at them.
Dragons for me were always kind of a actually pretty big component of my childhood, dragons and dinosaurs alike. But dragons in the form of the well-known by many people, just a somehow universally shared experience, the Dragonology book. It was this big red hardcover that as a kid, I absolutely tore to shreds just flipping through the pages. And I was delighted by just the invention of this fantastic creature that didn't exist anywhere else but on these pages.
For me, I just think they're neat. But obviously, yeah, they're very iconic. I've was very interested in dinosaurs as well when I was a kid, and it's just like such a cool like concept that has like crossed just time like eras and cultures and all sorts of
All right. Well, speaking of dragons crossing cultures and times and eras, so my first brush with dragons in the D&D sense was back in uh, early early second edition, when I started and got my hands on my first monster manual. It had, for me, a dragon back then was always just like, here's a big red dragon, it breathes fire. That's what dragons do. And then I got my first second edition monster manual, and it was. Did you know that there's like 10 different kinds of dragons? Or even more than just 10 different kinds of dragons? There are all the colors and all the metals and all the gems and and it just went on and on and on. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that there could be multiple kinds of dragons. I just figured dragons were all the one kind of thing. And it really kind of opened up the possibility of, not only just your standard artist. Most dragons had a similar artistic design, but then you had all these ones that were all specially designed based on what kind of color they were, what kind of breath weapon they used, whether they were good or evil, or in the case of the gem dragons, the neutral ones, and the neutral psychic ones.
Hmm.
But there were also some other ones that didn't fit the classical lineup. of the main breakdown, because there was your chromatics, your metallics, and then there were some gem dragons. But then after those groups, there was still a pile of a hand. There was about 5 or 6 kind of dragons that kind of fit but didn't, because they were all based on alignment back then as well. And for this one they had a different. They didn't fit into the traditional mold. So one of the ones that really spoke to me back then was the yellow dragon. It was one of the evil ones because it's chromatic. It comes in colors, not metals. But unlike all the other ones, it was very uh, strange in that its breath weapon was like sand. It lived in a desert, and it kind of treated itself kind of like an antlion, where it would kind of dig and burrow in the desert and attack caravans and breathe like burning sand at them. Like it would just suck in a whole bunch of sand from the desert and just exhale burning sand at you. And its environment was interesting in that it didn't allow for a lot of other classical D&D stuff, because you had to like figure out what lives in the desert, and there weren't a lot of desert options. It was early D&D was very much like, well, everything's in a dungeon or in a jungle somewhere or in like a traditional like medieval landscape. So there was a very limited amount of stuff that dealt with deserts, and a lot of it was like genies and stuff like that, which were hard to mix and match with like a dragon adventure if you were going to put one together. So it was always interesting to me. Both I liked their design. I liked the like weird shovel head design they had going on, so that they could dig through the sands easier.
I guess it definitely looks silly, but
It
I
does.
like
Well, I mean,
it.
all dragons in the second edition art style looked silly. Like that's just how we did back then. That was the classical design of the time. Um, but comparatively, it just had I don't know, it just had an interesting look to it compared to the other chromatic dragons. And I liked it. But all the dragons back then had like habitat information, and it was like the yellow dragons are very solitary. They don't even like to get together to make babies. And when they do, the as soon as the babies are born, the mom's basically done with them, and there's like, you're on your own, best of luck. And they fight with, I think they said, the like brass dragons for territory, because brass dragons also hang out in the desert, and it's kind of unfair to them because brass dragons are like part of like that true metallic cycle, and the yellow dragons aren't really part of the true chromatic cycle, so the power imbalance is kind of rough
Mhm.
on them. But they like to burrow around in the sand and cause problems, and I was like, I like them. But yeah, so there was the yellow dragon. Really enjoyed it back in the second ed era. And to go with that, I also really liked the Mercury Dragon. Also a dragon with a not quite correct breath weapon, in that it doesn't have a breath weapon. Um, the deal for it, at least back in the second edition era, I think when they got remade in the third ed era, they finally got around to giving it like a real breath weapon, just to match all the other dragons. But its deal was it lived along like the coastlines and ate fish all day, and it didn't have a breath weapon, but it could basically bend its wings to reflect light to make a laser.
I mean, that works.
It basically makes like a laser by reflecting light off of its wings.
Making like makeshift Archimedes death ray in some sort.
Kinda, yeah. And they were the chaotic good, very very friendly, freewheeling, fun dragons. I eventually actually got to play as one when we did Council of the Worms campaign where everyone got to be a dragon. And most of the players went with all like the classic dragons because they were like, oh, we got to have like the really cool classic dragons that breathe the fire or do like to have the cool powers. I'm like, can I be a mercury dragon? I just want to shoot lasers at people and eat fish. Is that cool?
I'm a simple creature.
Right.
I just want to eat fish and shoot lasers. I'm a simple creature.
The dream.
Live in the tree.
Living the dream.
Just sitting on the shore. Nothing, just rawr.
Shooting sunlight lasers at people. The best part is in the second ed book, like the info, the Habitat and Society info for it says that they can even use moonlight, but the moonlight isn't strong enough to do damage, so they usually use it as like a searchlight. They just make like a spotlight that follows things around in the dark. I miss that. I miss that kind of like creature building in more of the more recent books. We just don't have that anymore, and I'm very sad about it.
Truly news helicopter business.
Right. And this is also back when like the metallic dragons especially could, once they got old enough, they could always just like polymorph into a humanoid form also. So these are one of the ones that spend like a lot of their time hanging out in human villages because they just think humans are so neat.
Yes.
Like they're not a very big dragon anyway. Like as far as like the size chart goes, they tended to be like the tail is the longest part of this dragon by far. But yeah, in like their human form, they were just like they're friendly like people who hang out in fishing villages and always greet travelers and seem pretty friendly. But yeah, I really liked those. Now, speaking of Council of the Worms, that was an adventure design that allowed everyone to be dragons. So you had draconic problems that you had to resolve. Usually, it ended up fighting giants because dragons and giants didn't get along. But on top of that, there was just all kinds of everyone. Importantly, everyone got to be a dragon, and that's one of those you always see. I always see those posts on forums now from newer DMs that it's like, one of my players really likes dragons and wants to be a dragon. Is that going to cause a problem in my adventure? And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah.
Well, yes and no. Depends on the adventure.
Right. It depends on the adventure. It depends on how comfortable you are with one of your players being a dragon. Do you care that, one of your characters will eventually have like a powerful breath weapon that they can use and do stuff with? And
I have that in my campaign, but nobody plays a dragon because I have like story and myth and history why dragons aren't around and all that stuff. So, and even then, if they wanted to, it would be like heavy role play backstory stuff because I have so much stuff going on with them.
The good news, though, is in this, well, or at least there isn't a Council of the Worms setting published yet for 5th edition. I don't even remember if there was one published for 3rd or 4th edition. But there was a brief time, and you can still find it on the D&D Beyond like main page if you go back enough years of posts. But there was a guy there who did like their normal like news posts, and he posited like, what if all of your players got to be dragons? Here's an adventure. Here's like a one-shot adventure for all of your players being dragons. And it came out about the same time that Fizban's Treasury of Dragons book came out. And so, dragons were the rage right then. They were trying to market their dragon book to people. Mm-hmm. And this guy was like, we're finally going to answer that question to, like, I've got players who want to play dragons. How do we solve this problem? And the answer is everyone gets to be a dragon. Like, that's how this works. And he put out a really cool adventure. And I shamelessly stole it because that's what DMs do. and kind of edited it just a little bit because it was some good bones. It was good bones for an adventure, but it needed a little bit extra because the gist of the adventure is there is a you are a white dragon, a young white dragon. You and your other players are brothers and sisters, part of a clutch uh, reared by this adult or elder white dragon who like has this domain that she terrorizes, and a crystal dragon has moved in, and basically has begun turning the local village populace against your mother, and is like, hey, once we beat up this white dragon and all of her brood, I'll rule over the place and it'll be great because I'm not an evil dragon. I'm a good dragon. I'm a crystal dragon. We're better. Um, and in order to prevent your mother from like attacking and destroying like one of the villages, the crystal dragon has hired some adventurers to steal your mother's eggs. And they did. They're a high level adventure group. They've stolen your mother's eggs. And your mother's angry about that, and she's like, go get them back and kill everyone. So the adventure is you get to raid the Crystal Dragon's castle and fight the band of adventurers that are there and get the eggs back while your mother goes and beats up the Crystal Dragon.
That sounds awesome.
I know,
Go,
right?
Mom!
So, like I said,
Yeah.
the bones of the adventure, very good. I loved it. But one of the problems is it's very samey. All of the players are playing the same white dragon stat block, right? So there isn't a lot of space for innovation there. Not that white dragons innovate; they're the dumbest of the chromatic dragons. But that's not important. So what I decided to do was kind of alter the story a little bit to make your white dragon mother basically have access to this like enchanted fruit tree of like strange purple fruit that give her wild magic powers. and she's been eating it so long that it's given her like these glowy purple eyes and like all these spells that she can just cast that makes her like a cool white dragon. And as part of the adventure, each of the players gets to eat one of the purple fruit before they go attack the crystal castle. And I made a table of like everyone gets a cantrip from eating the fruit. I got like a table of like 10 random cantrips, and everyone gets a random like first or second level spell that I thought would be cool to use in the adventure. And it's basically you eat a fruit, you roll on the table, and this is your spell combination that the magic fruit gives you to make you different from your brothers and sisters when you go do your assault on the castle. But other than that, it's pretty fun adventure.
It sounds like a fun one.
And it definitely lets players scratch the itch of, so you want to be a dragon? Yeah, you can be a dragon. Sure, everyone's a dragon. It'll be great. You want to use your breath weapon on a bunch of like peasants trying to defend a castle? Go for it. It's fine. You're an evil dragon. Make it happen. What's that? You want to know what happens when a paladin comes at you with its glowing dawn sword and would like to smite you for a bunch of damage? Well, it is a high level paladin. It's going to hurt, but you're a dragon. It's fine. You'll be able to kill the guy. I'm sure of it. And if you don't, one of your brothers and sisters will. You're attacking with like 4 dragons.
You got it. It's fine.
Just walk it off.
But yeah. So I like that about the even in 5th edition, even though they don't have a book with like rules of like how players can play dragons, I like that at least one of the news writers that they had on the site at the time was like, I don't know why we need rules. Just everyone gets a dragon stat block. We're going to build an adventure. Make it happen. So that is my advice to those of you who have players at home who are like, I want to be a dragon. You're like, okay, we can do this. We can make this work. Just everyone grab a dragon stat block. It'll be fine. As long as the challenge rating is kind of similar, I should be okay. Then as the DM, you get to have the fun of building a high level adventuring party that is the villains that are trying to fight the dragons, or figure something else out. Some if they're all good dragons, I don't know. They have to maybe deal with some other dragon cult problems or giant problems or who knows what. But it's not a hard thing to solve. You just let everyone be a dragon.
Yeah.
It sounds like a fun one. So Ben, if you want to do that,
I mean, I can. I have that power. I have that adventure. I've got all.
I'll
the stats made
sacrifice
for it.
more time for it.
More time for it.
I'd happily volunteer.
I may run that as a one shot here on the Discord here at some point. I think I think it'll be really fun.
Yes.
But yeah, so like I said, from the older second edition days, we had some really fun dragons that a lot of them did not make it past fourth edition and into fifth edition. I know back in third edition there were so many splat books that everything would eventually get printed. So I can't say that it didn't make it into third because after a while everything made it into third. But I'm hoping to get even with Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, we did not get a lot of the older dragons pulled forward into fifth edition, and I'm a little sad about that. But
Yeah.
I'm sure given enough time we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, well, 5e's they just keep opening up different options and different things to do and different things to work with. Like, there's so many things happening and going on with 5e, and it's kind of blowing up with the capabilities now. Like, kind of reminds me of how they did with 3.5, because there's like 3.5 everything, 3.5. Now they're doing that with 5th Ed too, so... I love that they're expanding on dragons. I love that there's so many different kinds of dragons now, and then it just brings up so many more opportunities and options and character creations and story and just like everything. So
yeah, let's see. Fia, you had a dragon too, didn't you? You wanted to.
Yes. So I have another dragon that also doesn't quite fit the general silhouette.
Standard dragon mold.
Yeah. Rather, it takes a lot more inspiration from both. Well, I can't even say both because both things are real. Just full, like, actual, real cultural and biological entities. I'll use that word. That exist within our world. And I am talking about dragon turtles.
I love dragon turtles.
They are so cool. So I was first introduced to dragon turtles in a homebrew campaign that was one of the first actual campaigns that I played in during my junior year of high school, going into my senior year of the pandemic. And we were introduced to this dragon turtle baby. And at the time, it was just kind of like, okay, is this another sort of, it's a baby dragon. It's cute. It's how we approach most baby animal things in a party of murder hobos. We just decide that we will die for it. But then...
It's true.
Yeah.
That is how that works.
It is true.
Just like the squirrel's name is Vincent, and I will end everyone's life in this room, and then my own if anything happens to him. So we got this baby dragon turtle, but then later on in the campaign, we are confronted with its mother. And dragon turtles have a neutral alignment, and I had never dealt with a dragon with a neutral alignment before. So it just resulted in this really interesting quandary of like, what is the moral situation here? I'm really attached to this little turtle and I associate it as a pet, but observing the intelligence and the actual like awareness that this dragon turtle has, that this baby dragon turtle will eventually develop, tells me that it would be unjust if I were to hang on to this turtle that I am extremely attached to.
Also, that turtle's going to grow up to be really big.
Yes, but fortunately, it was an oceanic campaign, which is another reason why dragon turtles are just so awesome, because they provide another campaign environment for you to explore. Like there are plenty of reasons you could have a campaign on the ocean, but throwing a dragon turtle in there just adds more flavor. It makes it a little bit more rich, and it fills the environment. It adds more layers.
So I like dragon turtles as the moving island.
Yes,
I like that too.
That trope.
Yes, and those are that was seen in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah,
the lion turtles, and just they're cool. They're so cool, and I did say that they come from two different things in real life. Now, the first thing is they are visually, basically, an identical reflection of alligator snapping turtles.
Yep.
If you pick one of those up out of the swamp, don't pick one of those up out of the swamp. If you pick one of those up out of the swamp, you're basically holding a dragon, an actual dragon. It looks sick. It will break your arm, but it looks awesome. And it's just so cool. It's got like a spiked shell. It's like all the features that you would expect an actual like mythical creature to possess. And it's real. But also, dragon turtles are pulled from Chinese mythology. And I believe I wrote some notes about that. Sorry. So in Chinese mythology, they are a combination of two legendary creatures, a dragon and a turtle, but they are frequently used as an ornament within feng shui. And they're associated with courage, fertility, longevity, power, success, and support. And another fun fact about dragon turtles in general is, at least within Chinese mythology, Bowser was inspired by dragon turtles. I didn't know that. I thought he was just a turtle. But that's pretty sick. But that actually brings me on to my next topic, which is just the history of dragons in general, and how dragons are kind of a universal sort of being. You find little bits and pieces of them in all cultures. And the origin is actually like fully, we don't know. We don't know where they came from. They're from somewhere. We don't know how. But some people...
My general posit is people digging up dinosaur bones and not knowing what to do with them.
Exactly. That's one of the theories. Another one is that they may have been created from a human's natural fear of snakes, or another prevailing theory is they were just used as like mythological explanations for meteorological events before science could explain why stuff was happening. Stuff like rain and drought, just explanations for people who didn't yet have a means to explain things. And they're found in like all sorts of cultures. And I've got like a list of real cool ones that I found. There's Vritra, who was depicted in the Rig Veda in ancient India. And they first appeared around 1500 BCE. They were a Hindu personification of drought, and they were slain by the god Indra, king of the Devas, to release the waters of heaven onto the earth. And then Tiamat, who we know in D&D, but is also, honestly, one of the oldest depictions of dragons ever, is found in Mesopotamian mythology as a water deity who battled the god Marduk for supremacy over humans. And then there are Azi, or serpents, in Zoroastrianism and later Islamic scripture and folklore. And they're found in stories that culturally stretch from like Iran to India, or really just the entire Persian Empire. And in that particular context, they were mostly depicted as demonic creatures and were often slain by heroes of these stories. And they were just the enemy for people to have. Now, this next one, I hope I can pronounce correctly. Musushsu, which I know is probably not correct. But that one is from ancient Babylonian mythology. And the most
I
famous...
grabbed a picture of him for the main screen.
Yes. The most famous depiction of the Musushsu is on the Ishtar Gate of the city of Babylon, which dates all the way back to the 6th century BCE, which is crazy because, first off, Babylon, fabled city, but also just this dragon is present guarding the gate. That's really cool. And then particularly well-known one, at least for anybody who's interested in Egyptian mythology, is Apep, or Apophis in Greece, or Greek. And that one is a serpentine being that represents darkness and chaos, and is regarded as the enemy to Ra. And I fully lost where that was.
So that one's a dragon, and so that one also a snake, or well, I guess my question to you is, on the philosophical debate of this, Quetzalcoatl, the winged snake from the Mayan and Incan areas, dragon, winged snake.
For whatever reason, that one was not considered a dragon on Wikipedia.
Huh.
I'd consider it a dragon
I
personally,
would
just
also
from the stylization of Chinese dragons with the long, slender body. I would consider it the same thing.
Like I said, if I was like, if Apophis is a dragon, is the Quetzalcoatl a dragon?
I'm inclined to agree with you, and I'm honestly very disappointed that I forgot to include that in my list. That one's a really cool one. Thank you very much for bringing that one up. But Apophis is considered the enemy to Ra, and he goes by other names, like the Lord of Chaos, and the reason why he's considered a dragon is because one of his names is the Evil Dragon. Oh. But the earliest depiction of Apep is on the rim of a Nagada 1 seaware bowl, which is presently located in Cairo. And that particular artifact was made sometime between 4,000 and 3,550 BCE, which is pretty sick.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's really long. And then there's the other one that I hope I can pronounce correctly. Unkegula. I'm probably butchering that, but that one is... Oh, sorry.
I was say, it sounds like it's from a dead language.
It probably is.
Unfortunately, to a degree, it is. That one is from Lakota mythology. Yep. That one is a serpentoid monster that's credited with a multitude of disappearances or unexplained deaths. And in the story stories, it originally coexisted with nearby tribes and spirits in the Black Hills until it was a she and her counterpart began preparing to reproduce, which prompted people to try and slay them, of fear of them creating more monsters for people to fight. And there are so many like stories about how epic battles and the deaths of heroes against these two shaped the landscape just around that area in America. And it's so fascinating, and so few people know about it. And then finally, one of the most well-known representations of dragons, with the exception of European depictions, are the Long from Chinese mythology, which depictions of them date back to the Neolithic and the Bronze Ages, which positively ancient. And they're often associated with good fortune, and the emperor, who was the only one allowed to depict dragons on their clothing, residence, or personal belongings. And just understanding that all of these similar figures exist across all of these cultures and religions tells so much the story of how these ideas are exchanged, and it's just so cool to know that it's traveled that far.
Yeah, there's a lot of dragon tales across so many different cultures, and it is almost like how, you know, in various corners of the world everyone seems to be able to invent a pyramid. You know, it's not just an Egyptian thing. You can find them on almost every continent if you look hard enough.
Yeah.
Same thing with the dragons. Every culture seems to have a dragon mythology to it, one way or the other.
It does.
Which
It
is always
really
kind of
does.
interesting.
Absolutely. And a lot of modern depictions of dragons in like film and books, they just take the form of like the classic medieval European dragon, where typically it's four or two-legged, has bat-like wings, and a fairly straightforward, like dog-like shape, but lizard or reptilian composition. And there are slight variations, but they all kind of narrow down to the one that you see the most often.
Yeah, it's that classical European dragon look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it would be really sick if people started depicting all the other possibilities that there were. But maybe I just enjoy seeing unconventional things.
I mean, I think there's plenty of room for unconventional dragons in media. It definitely both broadens the horizons of what a dragon can be, and is, you know, there's not a lot that you really like need to be a dragon. You know, it's like, does it look kind of lizardy? And not all of them do. Like, we have, well, like I said, the ones that are basically snakes with wings, or the Chinese dragons are more lion or dog like, but they just happen to have like elongated serpent bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But like the head and like and feet features always seemed very more mammalian to me, almost like a chimera more than anything else.
And there is sort of this like universal understanding that these are like magic beings, that they have some sort of extraordinary power that they can wield over others or weaponize in some way. If it's like fire breath, or if it's the ability to fly without wings in the case of East Asian dragons, there's just this mutual understanding between all cultures that these beings are extremely powerful beyond human capabilities.
There's also the very much different points of view on it, where some people are terrified of these things that have so much power, and then there are people who absolutely worship these things that have power. So it's a very interesting thing to look at, especially with how dragons are everywhere in some shape, way, or form. They are everywhere, and you see people react however they see best. It's kind of an interesting view on them in general when it comes to different cultures and different viewpoints of the same creature, essentially.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of that within the case of the Persian Empire, the dragons depicted within the Persian Empire, because in East Asia, for a long time, dragons were depicted as these very good beings. They're associated with good fortune, and they're revered in some cases, most cases. But then from the West, there comes this idea that dragons are uh, devilish creatures that must be defeated by heroes.
That they're just
And
monsters.
exactly. And so that kind of creates a little bit of a culture clash
I
within
think
areas.
the early Catholic Church had part of a hand in some of that.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
That may have to do with it, but this also does come into play with Hinduism and Islam.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to see where these differ, and what lines were drawn based off of what ideas were spread. So you can pinpoint the similarities between them, but you can also distinguish, all right, this is the culture distinction.
Yeah, you can definitely trace cultures that did not that went the more respect the dragon route than the fear the dragon route in their storytelling evolution.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, those are a lot of fun depictions, and a lot of that can even be mined for use in various like Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. There are a
Oh,
lot of
certainly.
dragon lore stories that most people have never heard of, or they're culture. I'd say they're like culture locked in a way, where like if you're not immersed in that particular culture where those stories come from, you don't tend to cross paths with that media as often.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, if you're looking for some interesting ways to incorporate dragons, both good and bad, into your adventures, go read some actual mythologies from other cultures and just see how they used dragons, and see if that would if that sparks some interesting creativity.
Oh yeah.
I've definitely got one of the fun things going to college for my anthropology degree. We did a lot of cultural mythology. I did a whole class on those. So we got like a big book of like various cultural mythologies that I like to thumb through on occasion and just be like, what haven't I read recently that looks exciting? What can spark some interesting ideas? I picked up a book a while back that had a lot of really interesting African cultural mythology tradition, and it led to some really good uh, adventure building like brainstorms, just because they'd had a
Awesome.
lot of a lot of fun cultural bits that I hadn't really considered.
I like the main picture you've got up right
Oh,
now with
it's it's from
I
Rain of
know that
Fire.
movie.
It's
It's
from
Rain of
Rain of
Fire,
Fire.
and again, that could be a whole new like idea for a campaign where people are survivors because dragons, monstrous style dragons, took over the world, and you're
Yeah,
trying to survive and stop them from keeping control.
I
So
grabbed
like that's
that
another
one.
good
I
one.
grabbed that one because it is a maybe not a good take, but an iconic take on what someone did with a dragon story that I haven't seen done anywhere else.
Just to say Matthew McConaughey, and it was fantastic.
Um,
Especially at the end of it. He
yeah,
was wonderful. It's
it's
beautiful.
quite a movie. I can't say it was a good
He
movie,
was
but it is
very much a
quite a movie.
barbarian. He was very much a barbarian in that.
Um, I
And
was
that's how it ended
for the
for
longest
him.
for the longest time. I was always disappointed in these particular dragons because they're the bat winged no front
Yeah.
leg dragons, and I'm like
Yeah.
I was for a while in the earlier days. I was in the camp of that's not a dragon, that's a wyvern. There's a difference. No
Mm-hmm.
front legs, not a real dragon. I got over it.
Yeah.
But
There's even like it's spouting out. Speaking of the the wyvern styled creatures, that even includes a certain game franchise where you hunt monsters, and they're
right.
all a a type of wyvern. They all have it, so they're all like a type of dragon styled creature. So yeah, that's that's just something else too. That also, when people are like, "Oh, they're really dragons," I'm like, "No, it's a dragon. Just
A
accept
lot
it."
of look, guys, a lot of things are dragons.
All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was looking for a cinematic dragon picture, and I was like, oh, what should I go with? Rain of Fire.
It's a good. It's. I actually enjoyed that movie. I did actually very much enjoy that movie, despite like the some of the plot hooks and stuff with it. There was actually some.
Despite like the everything, it was an enjoyable movie.
I actually just enjoyed it because I liked Christian Bale in it, so I I liked the movie. I don't think I'd like it for like its intended purpose of being that scary dragon movie, but I just enjoyed it, and I think it's just because I kind of liked looking at how much effort they put into the design of the creature and putting in all of the animation for it and everything. I think is kind of what I liked more about it,
It
probably
is
why I like it.
it is a movie where if I heard tomorrow that Netflix was redoing it, I'd be like, you know what, I'd sit through it. I'd see what it looks
I'd
like
watch it.
with
I would
today's
watch
graphics.
it. I would watch it. I would. I'd be
I will.
interested.
I feel a little out of the loop because I haven't seen Rain of Fire at all. So
Oh,
Make a
I'm
point.
with you.
Make
I don't watch movies.
both of you make a point. Do a movie night. Watch Rain of Fire. It is the premise is very simple. What happens if a bunch of dragons woke up during the modern day, destroyed society, and everyone basically had to uh, live as roving tribes of barbarians, hoping in like the wreckage of the modern era, hoping that the dragons don't destroy you. And the dragons set everything on fire because the dragons feed on ash.
Ooh,
So
that does sound pretty sick.
it it's a it's a very interesting take on dragons in the modern era, and it was a fun
Although,
watch. I can't say it was
although
a good movie, but it
fu-
was a fun watch.
funny enough, with that scene in particular, I would say that those versions were actually sentient enough that they probably could have communicated, but they just didn't feel like
Right.
talking. They seem with it because he literally is standing up to it and it is just staring him down, and he is like, "Really? You're really facing me right now? Well, that's really brave of you." And like that's why I'm like, there's just kind of this ounce of intelligence that you can see in them. I think is also something, it's just something interesting. I don't get to see animated dragons very much, so when I get to see animated dragons and I get to actually see those tiny details, it's fantastic. I think there is another, like, I'm not going to say the name of it, but it's a Disney movie that has a lot of like dragons in it, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
just came out like maybe a few years ago. It's a really good movie, and they actually have, it's all about dragons, and it's that style of dragons, more particular in East Asia. and the like, where dragons are kind of more on the fortune and the good and the positive side. So yeah, it's interesting because I like seeing dragons actually animated.
Yeah.
I like seeing the characters and personalities that could be portrayed in them, and then I actually get to see them move. Is fun.
Yeah. But no, that is one of the fun things about, especially cinematic dragons, because it's basically just what if person, but haughty. What what if what if a person, but looking at people like they look at animals?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good dragon movies that came out recently. I think Damsel came out on Netflix
Yeah, I
recently. That
haven't
one,
watched it, but it
if
looks
you haven't made a point,
good.
I watched it. Was worth a watch. Make a point to do so.
I haven't because I do enjoy the actor. The actress, Bobby Brown, she is a
Uh,
wonderful
Again,
actress.
it's a Netflix movie. I can't say it's a good movie, but it is worth a watch.
I
Yeah,
definitely
I
want to see it.
I will say I love the design of the dragon in that
Right.
film. It's a smaller depiction of what we normally view dragons as,
Hmm.
but it felt very. That's partially why I brought up like the dog-like features. It felt like a very greyhoundish kind of body, and
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
you can visualize how this thing would run at you.
You can tell where the
Yeah.
budget of that movie went, and it went into the dragon.
Yeah, 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 and every other plot point just. We'll get over it.
Not important. You're here for a dragon.
You're here for a dragon.
How do her burns just heal? Dragon.
It's not important. Dragon.
Dragon.
Not important.
Dragon.
Dragon.
Look-
Not important.
Look at this dragon we'll throw at you.
It's a really cool dragon. We promise.
Look at how shiny the rocks in this cave are.
Right.
Shiny.
That's where the budget went.
Exactly.
But speaking of dragons in general, I think Sasha, you had a lineup of dragons for us.
I did. I kind of chose the more basic ones that came from D&D as a whole. Mostly because a lot of my passion for dragons came from starting out. I started out in like a little, very tiny bit of 3.0, and then I went to 3.5 and really delved into dragons. And kind of, I loved how these basic ones got kind of explored out, and there's a whole book based on them in 3.5. You know this one, Ben. And it just explains all of the dragons, their personality types, their tropes, their habitats, what they like to eat, how they like to eat. And it just kind of has like it's a foundation for like what you want to do and build in there. And it's kind of just that you kind of need that basic foundation, like how you have a lot of mythology and a lot of different cultures. There's this solid foundation that it is a big flying thing that does things that we can't do. So that's why I really loved that one. And there's a very particular one that is one of my favorites because most of my friends know I'm very obsessed with fae creatures, and they have fae dragons, which are adorable little mischievous creatures that I absolutely love. It's because I love fae creatures as a whole, and they are just adorable.
There's
And
one on the main
I think,
screen for you.
yes, they're so cute, and they're also, they can be used as familiars, they can be used as just some kind of insert NPC, they can just be there, hiding around usually. But
They're
I
small.
really love them, yes. They also remind me of the pseudo dragons, which are about the same size as like a house cat, but
Well,
they
the
can't
pseudo dragon
talk.
is what if dragon but cat software.
Hmm. They don't. I don't know if you've ever seen a pseudo dragon, but they are absolutely adorable too. They're very tiny, cat-sized dragons that they can't actually talk. They kind of make murmurs and sounds, and that's what they kind of do. And they do pretty much have cat software
That's how
in
I've seen them
dragon
depicted
hardware.
in like every adventure that has them. Is
They
what if
yes.
dragon but pretend it's a cat.
Yes, and there's a lot of these basic ones, both the metallic and the chromatic, who have their own areas, and then you have these types of small dragons or other dragon type creatures that just kind of like mix in with them. So it's just kind of like a giant painting of different creatures, different abilities, and there's actually, if I remember right, there's kind of like they have different personalities,
Hmm.
and that's why
Well,
I like about them.
the third edition era, like back in the second edition era, we had so much information about how how dragon society kind of socialized, how their habitats and how they handled themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until the third edition era that the art style really solidified around each kind of dragon
Yeah.
to give it its own feel. Whereas before, a lot of the dragons looked kind of samey European dragons, except for some
Mm-hmm.
reason the gold dragon was one of the East Asian, like Zulong kind of style. That was really weird, by the way. Like all the other dragons, European style. Gold dragon, the only one that was like Eastern style for any reason, and I had no idea why.
Right.
But it wasn't until the third ed era that they actually went in specific art direction for each of the main chromatic and metallic dragons to give them an individualized look, so that not even with the color, but just the shadow profile of it, the silhouette of the dragon, you could tell what kind of dragon it was just by its outline.
Yeah. That was actually something that I loved more about it. And then they had the different breath weapon types, and the breath weapon types were all associated with their type of environment.
Hmm.
Like a lot of the times, like as it shows the black dragon usually stuck to swamps for the most
Yeah,
part,
had
as
like
it
an acid
used
breath.
acid breath. Say, and then the white dragon, which is the least intelligent of them all, stayed up in the mountains and had an ice breath. Which there's nothing wrong with white dragons in general. It's just they are considered the least intelligent out of the groups,
Out of the five, the
but
main
they're
five
still
chromatics,
incredibly intelligent. They're
they're
just not
they're
as smart as
they're
the
just
other
they're just
ones.
very dangerous. People keep forgetting that. They're like, oh, it's just a white dragon. It's fine. And we're
It's
like,
just a white
it will
dragon.
still kill you.
Yeah.
And there's also the same thing. Then the green dragon also prefers usually forests or swamps because it also has an acidic breath. And then I kind of liked with chromatics, where chromatics tended to be the wanting near humans and kind of other like races and other cultures, because they transform themselves to look like humans or elves or whatever shape they want to, so they can actually intermingle with people because they were curious about people and humans. And I just love that for the chromatics specifically. I just love that. And I think that this having these basics here in the form with D&D just helps bring out more creativity for a lot of different people. I had so many people make different characters based on dragons, based off of dragon tendencies, based off of dragon cultures, based off of just different everything. Like you can literally just put everything in a hat and then just draw and you'll have something when it comes to these kinds of dragons. Oh yeah, there's Tiamat.
Yeah.
She's fun.
Love her.
Yep.
We gotta love Tiamat.
Let's see. I also managed to. I remembered I still had art from the Moonstone dragon that you liked.
Oh god, I love the Moonstone
Um,
Dragon. I just
so
love the way it looks more than
well,
anything.
well, so there's the way it looks normally. This is the art that they printed in the Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, right?
Love it.
And this was good art. Don't get me wrong,
Oh, it's gorgeous art.
I
but
love the head.
Yes.
the artist had concept art, and it was way better.
I also love this style. I love both of them. Like, I exactly love both of them.
Uh, So when I saw the original art, I was like, oh well, that's kind of a cool dragon. Then I went to the artist website and was like, oh, there's concept art of this dragon. Oh, this dragon is amazing.
Right. I love it. I love it so freaking much. I love the Moonstone Dragon, and I love how it looks. Like, I loved both pictures because they're both absolutely gorgeous. And that's one of my favorites when it comes to the gemstone style dragons is the Moonstone Gem. As soon as I saw it, I was just like, I love this thing and I want to see it every day for the rest of my life. Because it is absolutely beautiful. And that's something about dragons too. Some of them they're majestic, and that's why a lot of people love them like me. They're just majestic lizard creatures.
Mm-hmm. And with this Moonstone one, this is the one from Fizzbands where they're like, yeah, there are gemstone dragons, and those tend to all be like the psychic dragons or whatever. But this one is more tailored to the Feywild. So if you'd have like a Feywild adventure, this is the kind of dragon that you would run across in the Feywild.
Yep.
That and your fairy dragons and whatnot. But
I love the fairy dragons, and I know the fairy dragons usually tend to be mischievous, and they like to pull those pranks, and they like to do exactly what Fae like to do. So
yeah, there's one time I got to use a fairy dragon effectively. Sasha, you played in this adventure. It was when we did the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and
yes,
there's a floating castle in the dungeon.
I remember this.
It's shrunk down. It's tiny. It's like a little dollhouse dungeon that's floating over like a giant pit on one of the floors. And if you go to it, if you manage to fly across like this massive pit to the center where it's floating, you will shrink down to the size to be in the castle as if it were a real castle. And
I remember this.
And there's like a closet or some kind of like not a closet, like a little homunculus that is taking care of the castle for the wizard who owns the castle. The wizard's not home.
I remember this.
And this homunculus is running around like trying to take care of the castle and everything. And in when you're shrunk down, the homunculus did not get shrunk down because it's already tiny. So it's technically like a 7-foot tall, like ogre-sized monster compared to you. Well, there's a fairy dragon that wanted to move into the castle. And it's already small, so it didn't get shrunk down either. So it's like the size of a dragon in a real castle. And it's really, really excited about this because it's never gotten to be the big dragon.
Because I helped it. My character helped it be a part of the member of the castle.
Right. And but it's in constant war with the homunculus. Because the homunculus can't die. Because every time like the dragon kills the homunculus, it like respawns back somewhere else in the dungeon.
Yeah, I remember that too.
So it's in like a constant prank war with the homunculus. And it wants you to figure out how to stop the homunculus from respawning so that it can just have the castle. Because it wants to rule a castle. And it finally found a castle that's the perfect size.
It was such a cute fairy dragon. So adorable.
It was a fun side adventure in that giant like Dungeon of the Mad Mage adventure.
Oh man, I remember that one. I remember that adventure. Oh.
Yeah. No, it's a fun way to use dragons, especially tiny ones like the fairy dragons. I think there was another one shot that I picked up at some point where you're like traveling down the road and you run across a fairy dragon who needs you to help rescue its family because there's like poachers that have captured them and they were going to sell them off to wizards or something.
I don't know if I know that one, but
yeah, I've got my hands on that. It's in my one shot library. But I like that one too because he's just a really friendly, very sad little fairy dragon. He's like, please, I want my family back.
I just want my
family back.
Please help me
get my family back. I'm a fairy dragon. I can the best I can do is like sleep breath people, and that's not good enough. I need real adventurers to help me get my family.
Yeah, those ones are always fun, and they're always kind of like you're not sure exactly what their true intentions are for the most part. And then you have ones that are like, please help me with my family. I am just but a tiny little flying lizard that can talk and has really cute wings. So, like, please help me. I'll reward you. Oh
But
my
yeah,
gosh.
no, they're fun. I like them. I don't get to
Yeah.
use fairy dragons nearly enough.
Yeah.
Mostly because uh, I just don't have a lot of adventures that kind of call for them. But
Right.
whenever I get a chance to kind of slip one in there, it is worth every minute.
Right. There is also the wonderful aspect that happens a lot in especially new players with D&D. A lot of the newer players that didn't really grow up around lore and the history of it, they love doing the murder hobo for dragons because of all the loot and the hordes, because dragons have hordes. So um, I love the concept of, yeah, the dragons collect gold, but I also like the concept of you can change, what they collect instead. And it's like, you're going to run into a dragon that has a collection of frogs, or you have a dragon that has a hoard of rocks that they like.
I want there to be a black dragon who lives in a swamp, and its hoard is frogs. It just collects all the frogs, like every frog.
It just has a horde of frogs. And then he makes tiny hats for them.
I love the concept of a horde of frogs because like I'm just imagining like the party like going through a swamp and it's like stone quiet for like such a long time. And then all of a sudden, like as you're like approaching this dragon, you just hear like a deafening amount of frogs like coming towards you.
They're like, we're supposed to kill the dragon, and they're going through the swamp. Hey, doesn't swamp usually have frogs? I need you to roll a nature check. Yeah,
The answer
swamps
is
usually do,
it
but
turns
there's
out
no
they
frogs
do.
around. Don't know why there's no frogs around.
I used to live in a house that had like a marshy area and a pond nearby, and there would just be nothing but toads and frogs singing every single night.
I went through
Or
that with summer.
or a green dragon, because they're the poison ones. That collects poison dart frogs.
I could see that
Ooh.
and be in a more it'd be in a different setting where
Like a
it'd be
jungly,
like a
setting.
jungly Amazonian river style jungle.
Just like little gem strands of poison dart frogs hanging from vines on the trees.
They just stare at you.
Like, this is my collection.
I'd love to see, that's why I'd love to see that, where you just do have these dragons have different collections, different hordes of things, and people will be like, I thought dragons collected gold. Well, those are mostly different dragons. So, like, those are like the red dragons like gold, and like this one liked, I'm sorry, what?
Well, like the fairy dragons have that deal, right? Where their horde is there's I think there's like one of the books has like a table for fairy dragon hordes, and it's like it collects buttons. Or,
I have done that before. I have made a little fairy dragon that had some kind of. It wasn't just buttons, it was just shiny collectibles. Essentially, the crow equivalent of. of a fairy dragon, because it was just like, you bring me shiny, that's my shiny. Go ahead and put it in the shiny pile. You bring metal shiny in that pile. But it's adorable, and that's why I love that, and that's why I decided to kind of go into the basic chromatic dragons and the metallic dragons. It's just
yeah.
it's
You could
just the
have a fairy
basic
dragon
foundations.
that collects mushrooms as payment for things. It will guide you through the
Yes.
forest, but it wants a fancy mushroom.
It was a fancy mushroom. I think I need to put that in my campaign, but there's that other one that we'll talk about later.
Portobello, ha, plebeian.
You bring me a morel.
Rel, don't bring me the shiitake. I don't want it. Next time a king oyster better be placed upon my paws.
I swear to God, if you don't find lion's mane.
Right. But yeah, no. Again, you can play with dragon hordes. They, especially when you start dealing with like the Fey style dragons, they don't have to collect normal things. They could just the weirdest thing you could think of. Just that's their horde.
I still want to see a black dragon that just has a collection of frogs.
Yeah.
And like one better have a witch hat, and I mean
It's an actual like gnomish wizard who polymorphed himself into a frog so that he didn't get eaten by the dragon. He's just like I've become part of the horde.
Or he traded his life to be a frog so he wouldn't die. Like, you have two ways to do this, wizard. I eat you, or you become a frog and join my horde. And the wizard's like,
that way.
the wizard's like, well, I'm out of spell slots, so if you put it that way, ribbit,
Polymorph.
ribbit, ribbit. Can I keep the hat? Yeah, that's fine. Help me remember you. Oh, that's good. But yeah, that's why I chose those ones. It's fun. They're just fun. I have more of the fun creative side when it comes to those things. I think they're great.
But yeah, speaking of dragon adjacent things, Lynn, you wanted to talk about slightly not dragons.
Yeah, they're fairly close to dragons, pretty closely related, but I wanted to talk more towards dragonborns. I'm still fairly new to D&D naturally, but my first like kind of encounter with like dragonborns was in one of my first games in 3.5e, and I was just kind of like going through the races of like different characters while building a character. This was one that I was kind of starting like midway through a campaign that was like already in progress, and I saw like Dragonborn as an option. I'm like, oh, that's an excuse to be a dragon. That's like awesome, and they also they kind of fit in with like the character I kind of wanted to build. I was thinking of building like a cleric healer style charisma based class. So um, so yeah, that was a really good time. I created a character, gave me excuse to like also have like a breath weapon. Um, is a very yeah, it's a good time. One of my first encounters with them was we got stuck in this narrow hallway with a slime, and kind of running out of like spell slots at this point of the time, like midway through a dungeon, and decided to use my electric breath weapon in a very narrow area against a slime, and I just ended up making things worse for everyone. But you know,
Wait, were you standing behind the party when you shot your line of breath weapon?
Maybe.
maybe.
The back row shouldn't use that kind of an AOE.
You know, the things that you learn as you're starting out, of course.
If there's ever a time to learn.
Exactly. It's in the field. That is obviously the first time to learn.
Learning on the job.
It kind of fit in with my character anyway. She was very new to the idea of adventuring with a party and all this stuff. And it and yeah, she obviously had a lot to learn with that. But I always thought, yeah, Dragonborns are very cool. They they are, and they have like they have a lot of dedication to like honor, while also being very rare in like the concept of D&D, and being a like uh with a lot of other races having very mixed feelings. So it's very interesting to make kind of like a like a lone wolf character, or that type of sorts. Um uh so yeah, um I'm sorry, lost my train of
Oh, that's
thought.
fine.
Okay.
So
Um
one of the things about Dragonborn, so the early depictions that we got, like in this particular edition, but uh, earlier on, they're the kind of imposing Dragonborn. I was the kind of look that they had, big, kind of bulky, lot of scales, various head crests based on kind of the dragon that they're kind of emulating.
Hmm.
But then when we got the Fizban's Treasury of Dragons art, we got the gem dragons, and they made a specific point to make them smoother, I guess.
I
Little
absolutely love how they look.
um,
I love it.
where or just make them look less scary. So that you can kind of, so that everyone isn't like, I need to be the scary dragonborn paladin, or I need to be like the big hulking scary dragon. I can be like the cool fun dragon.
I was
yeah,
always the cool
exactly.
fun dragon, but I was bulky.
Yeah, but this way you get like a little bit of a body type range
Right. No, that's why
to
I
kind
love
of,
it. I love seeing it.
I like seeing that in the art.
Absolutely. Um
Let's see. Now you played a dragonborn in our most recent Owlbear Run game.
We both
yeah,
did, yeah.
Yeah, you both did.
this is
Now, you both came upon being Dragonborn independently, right? If I remember correctly, like you both were like, and we decided to be Dragonborn.
yeah,
And the other
it
two
was
players were
funny.
like, we decided to be elves. And we had like two elves and two dragons.
It was a very, very funny coincidence. And also it's also very funny how we ended up being like kind of you know, separate ideas on with Dragonborn, obviously. I was, you know, more of a warlock. Uh I I kind of sat in the background and kind of eldritch blasted people, and walked you know, and was a lot of the voice for the party for a lot of it. And Sasha, she did mostly tanking, and
The
she was
classic
doing talent.
Dragonborn Paladin.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
to a degree, he wasn't meant to be like classic. He was more like he was supposed to be like a big lovable talky guy. He's
Hmm.
pretty much like a big bear. And like he was also like very he would self-sacrifice if he knew it meant everybody else would be safe, and like he was like very protective. Like he knew that this other dragonborn was a lot smaller and not necessarily weaker, but in the sense of like physical wise they're smaller, so he wants to protect the small. And the he was also bigger than the elves too, so he always had an instinct to protect the smaller ones. And that was just how he was as a person. And he loved like telling stories and just he was just a big lovable guy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Unlike the
And
one broody elf.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Fia, have you ever got a chance to play a Dragonborn yet?
I actually have once. It was a very short-lived Curse of Strahd campaign that I was invited to join, and I played a very short little blue dragonborn. She was about like 4 feet tall, abnormally short. And her name was Crumb. And she was just a little barbarian who just had short person syndrome and felt undue amounts of aggression towards so many things.
You're a dragon. People.
Yeah. Fear me.
Respect my authority. I am a dragon. Fear me.
Exactly.
Huh.
And what I think is most funny about that particular character was when I played it, I was very early on in high school. And I had a very high voice. So it's just this very tiny, high-pitched voice being like, I'm gonna kick your butt! Just throwing myself into rooms.
That's fantastic.
I love it.
Swinging at beds when they're not doing anything.
I had some fun Dragonborns. Dragonborns were some of my favorite races, and I love to play them. And speaking of the Dragonborns being brought up, there are also one little adorable dragonoid creatures that I think are incredibly adorable that are kobolds.
Oh, yes.
I love them, as I have an NPC in mind that is a kobold named Scrap, who does not know anything about a kobold because how dragons are in my world. So the dragonoid creatures don't know what they are. They don't know who or what they are. And he just was called Scrap because he always scrapped things. So he called himself Scrap. And it was adorable. He had a brother named Shiv. Shiv made shivs. So that's why his name was Shiv.
Yeah. No, so I've not gotten to play a lot of Dragonborn. I've played a statistical Dragonborn at least once. I say that because
I think I have.
he was it was an Eberron campaign, and the conceit of the character was that he mechanically is a Dragonborn. He looks completely like a Dragonborn, but he didn't start out life as a Dragonborn. He was a normal human soldier in the military that went off during the wars in Eberron that caused the apocalypse, and there was a big explosion and a whole bunch of weirdness happened and a whole bunch of things got mutated and whatever.
Yep.
And he and his regiment were out in the wild, mutated land, fighting monsters, and they came across this weird mutated draconic thing that ended up killing like his entire regiment except for him. And as far as he knew, it was going to kill him, and it probably, as far as he knew, did. But then he woke up heavily scarred by it, and eventually the scars kind of overtook his body, mutating him into a dragonborn.
Really
So everyone thinks he's or whatever a dragonborn means in the context of Eberron, but he's not. He's just a scarred war veteran that is just trying to get by. And everyone's like, "Oh, a dragon monster," and he's like, "I'm not a dragon monster. Please stop." But no, one of the things, Dragonborn are actually kind of a newer invention of D&D.
They are.
Dragonborn as we know them didn't exist until 4th edition. There were some draconic-like creatures that you could play back in the 3rd edition era, and were technically things that existed back in the 2nd edition era, but no one ever really got to play them because they were humanoid draconic monsters. But when fourth edition came around, one of like the memories of the beginning of fourth edition that's seared into my brain is right when it was about ready to launch, like a week or two before the first books came out, they Wizards put out a bunch of little pamphlets, like a little bunch of little like travel pamphlets almost in the stores about various bits about the new edition. And one of them was like on the various races. You could flip through some pamphlets about like the various races that were going to be in the player's handbook. And one of them was Dragonborn. And I was like, what are you talking about? People can't, they don't let people be dragons? Like, what? And I opened it up, and they were talking about how the Dragonborn were like a humanoid race that, kind of uses draconic trappings and, whatever. But they had like a simplistic, like, why does a player want, why should we let players play dragons? Question mark, right? And then it had a section for like the simplistic answer, the normal answer, the complicated answer. And in the simplistic answer, it's because dragons are cool! Exclamation point.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's accurate.
Like the perfect reason.
Right. And then like the middle answer was like, we always have players that always ask if they want to play dragons, and we decided that, you know what, starting out right out of the gate, we're going to give players the opportunity to have like a cool draconic kind of character without overburdening DMs with trying to figure out how to fit a baby dragon into a party challenge rating wise so that it fits like levels and challenge ratings and doesn't overbalance the game. And then there was a complex like reason that was like 3 paragraphs long that nobody really needed to read. It was mostly to satisfy the people who didn't let it go after the first 2 answers. But I just every section in that pamphlet, because it was like one of those like fold out like 3-page pamphlets, and it was every section. The simplistic answer was because dragons are cool! Exclamation point. And I was like, no, you're fine. That tracks.
Yeah.
And that's how we got Dragonborn. Dragonborn are, dragons are cool, and that's all we really needed. And now players can the players who want to have that draconic itch scratched can very easily just do that.
Well,
and it really just helps in that regard.
in 3.5, they did have Dragonborns. They just weren't like
they were
a
the
base race.
Draconians or whatever, right?
You had to a degree, like they were called like Dragonborn, but technically, what you had to do, you had to be like a worshiper of
Bahamut or Tiamat. There was like an entire feat tree that you had to like,
and like you had to
way.
follow all of this stuff, and then once the time was right, you essentially just kind of cocooned yourself into an egg, and you had to stay there for some period of time undisturbed, and then you came out as a dragonborn. And you essentially come out of your shell, and whatever size you were, you remain the same size. You just come out looking like a dragon-ish. And that was something that happened because it was like, it's a ritual. You have to have so many prerequisites and criteria in order to make that. So like technically they had something like that, but not an actual like genuine origin of it until
not like
fourth
fresh
edition
out of the
happened.
gate. Yeah.
And I loved Dragonborn. I loved playing Dragonborn. And there were a lot of times that when I was in a 3.5 game, the DMs that I'd have would pretty much let me do in 3.5. I'd do the Dragonborn stats in 3.5, but I'd have the 4.0 origin, where I didn't sit there and go through a ritual. Instead, I was just born a Dragonborn. And I liked that a lot.
Yeah, like I said, with the advent of 4th edition, they were like, you know what? Let people play dragons. It's fine.
And even then, they're not as powerful as like what dragons actually are. They have they're like minor capabilities versus actual dragons, which I'm also fine with.
But yeah, that's the origin of Dragonborn. Now, for those of you who are trying to find some inspiration, like Dragonborn, there's plenty of ways to get Dragonborn inspiration for your characters, right? Like there's 15 different types of dragon you can be a Dragonborn of. There's 5 chromatics, 5 metallics, 5 gem dragons now. Um, but even if you're having a hard time kind of struggling, I got a tip for you. Uh, just Google Dragonborn art and hit search.
Makes it
And
easy.
Specifically D&D Dragonborn art, otherwise
you
you're
don't
going to
no
end
you
up
don't you
in
don't have to be
Skyrim.
you don't have to be very specific. But if you want to narrow it down, sure. Because I did that just on a whim, and here are two Dragonborn that I came up with that really kind of looked very interesting to me on the lith.
Yes.
So
Whoa.
one of them's a black Dragonborn, probably some kind of a warlock or druid, and then the other one with the white highlights. I like to imagine it as a white Dragonborn,
Mm.
like sorcerer of some kind. Um, or maybe even like a cleric. But it has like the furs and everything that you expect in like cold climates, and I like to think like the black outlining is just like charcoal paint or something that they've used in lieu of other ritualistic paintings to outline their scales.
Yeah.
But these are not your standard bulky dragonborn looks.
I love
And
the slender. I love
yeah,
that
I
slender
like I like
look.
me some slender dragonborn.
And it's mostly because it'll fit the theme of whatever class and origin and background you have. That you have the ones where it's like, well, mine was never really made for fighting, but I had a knack for Eldritch Blast, so that required more energy, not in the physical part. So I really liked that, and I just like that idea of different. Um, I don't know how to say builds
Yeah.
of like Dragonborn, like different body shapes and builds. I love the
Diversity.
diversity. Thank you.
Hmm.
I love the diversity. That's what I like more than anything because yeah, it's cool to have a bulky Dragonborn or whatever. Especially you'll have ones that are like trying to be like gentle or whatever, but they're like big, bulky, and like scary dragons. But then you have ones that are absolutely more terrifying and they look like that.
Yeah, especially these particular. Like there are other ones that you go find yourself some dragonborn wizards or some dragonborn rogues or whatever else art can be served up to you. If you're again, this is just for inspirational. You just need just if you're not familiar with what you can get away with as a dragonborn, you're just like, show me what other people have thought of, and then kind of travel down that road and see if anything sparks joy as you go.
Right. And that's why I love people who can draw. You're amazing. People
Yeah.
who are artists that can draw. I love them for it because they make stuff like this and it's just fantastic.
But yeah, speaking of fun dragon art, though, as we start to wrap this up, I've got so my wife had a suggestion as I was putting this together. She wanted to talk. She wanted us to talk about plant dragons, and I was like, first off, what is a plant dragon? That's not a thing. But I was wrong. Um, Turns out there is a Kickstarter that had happened recently that is a field guide to plant dragons that she had picked up, and I gathered some of them. The field guide to floral dragons, I believe, is the name of it. Not sponsoring us. It's just a thing that looked really cool, and I figured I would share with you guys and our viewers. I grabbed about 6 or so of the dragons from the lineup. I'll show them off. Get your thoughts on what you think. I didn't grab like the stat blocks or anything for these because that would have taken up a lot of space on the screen. But just the art and the name, and just kind of see if that excites you. So right off the gate, we have the Cherry Blossom Dragon. And its art looks like this.
Oh, that's really pretty.
I'll take 50.
So this is the art for the Cherry Blossom Dragon. I like the combo front legs into long, kind of Asian dragon, the Eastern style back end to it with like a big petal tail.
Mm-hmm.
And the ribbons were kind of a nice touch.
I love just the cloud of
the like the main cloud.
Yeah, and that reminds me so much of East Asian dragons, but particularly dragons in like Chinese and Japanese mythology are associated with like weather. In Japanese mythology, specifically rain. And
Yeah,
that's really cool. Implementing the cloud as flowers.
mm-hmm. Like a flower
yeah.
petal cloud that just kind of like flows through it.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the cherry dragon. Then we have the clematis dragon. For those of you who are familiar with what a clematis is, he looks adorable. I love him. I hope you enjoy this.
Take 50!
We said we wanted a horde of frogs.
Yes! So I was like, frogs. It
This
looks
is
like
my
a frog.
horde.
It looks like a frog. It's adorable. It's so cute.
I know, right? Isn't this great? I like his face. His face just sells it for me. I'm so happy to be here.
I love it. It's adorable.
Oh, he gets into so much shit, but you can't be mad at him for it.
Now imagine, because we were talking about, a black dragon that had like a frog collection earlier. Imagine that like you've offended this black dragon, and then the only way to make it right is to go capture a clematis dragon and bring it to him.
I could never.
Think of the turmoil within the party of people being like, I don't know if I want to do that. But the other's going, the black dragon will kill us, right?
Oh, it's the dragon turtle all over again.
I know, right?
It's the baby dragon turtle all over again.
Exactly.
So
that's great.
Yeah, that's the
It's a lose-lose.
It is adorable.
Next up, the dandelion dragon.
Oh boy!
I'm excited
now I know what
for
you
this
think
one.
you're gonna get, and know that it's probably that, but even more adorable.
Yes.
Look at the bug face.
I love
they're tiny and they carry messages for people, apparently, according to the book.
Oh, that's so cute.
They're little messenger dragons.
I would love to see. These are so many that would just be with fairy dragons. They would just
like this
be
one.
in
This
the
one feels like a
Feywild.
fairy dragon like variant.
I love the kangaroo posture.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's so unique.
I love the little letter that's just in its hind legs.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that.
I love it. I think it's adorable.
No. This is a very this one. Like I said, while I was scrolling down all these, some of them I skipped. They looked honestly, as you described earlier, like more doggish than dragon. So they were cool, but they were just kind of like, they didn't really have wings. They were kind of more bulky ground dragons.
Kind of more like a drake.
Yeah. But I saw this one and I was like, well, first off, this is a design of a dragon that I've never seen before.
I love how much it looks like a little fey or a little bug.
Mhm.
I love it.
I absolutely love the little palm
Oh yeah, the
antennas that it
little
has.
Yes, the little
little
pom
antenna
pom
palms.
antennas.
Yes.
I like that its wings have like that. What kind of moth is that? That has like the two big wings and then the thin tail.
Shoot.
Like
And
not
then
not a
The
emperor
Luna moth.
moth or something. What?
the
Luna
Luna.
moth? Yeah,
Luna.
that one. Yeah, it has
Yeah.
those kind of wings. It feels like. But yeah, I rather enjoyed that. Next we have the Jade Vine Dragon.
Ooh.
And it looks like this guy.
The tongue. The little
The little
zzz.
saucy tongue.
Yes, the little snaky tongue.
It has kind of like a bat look to it.
It's got a devious face. I love it.
He's just a little guy.
It's just the eyes, the
Oh, the smolder. Smolder look.
it's the eyes.
He's just a little stinker.
It's another one.
But no, I liked the, and I assume it's the Jade Vine coloration along with his tail end that kind of gives it its inspiration. But I do like that they went with a bat-like dragon
Yes, I
design
do
for this
too.
for
I
this
love
one.
it. I love it. I love the effort here. I love the vibrant color. It again, I just feel like so many of these would just be running around in a forest somewhere. Just because of just the way some of them are designed.
And then finally, I'm going to say this incorrectly. Uh, Ornithinagalum dragon? I don't know this flower. I don't know this plant.
Ornithogolem.
Okay. I don't know this plant.
Ornithogolem.
I don't know it by name, but if I probably see it, I'll recognize it.
It looked I liked it a lot.
I'll take 50. I love it. I love it so much.
I just want to give him a big ol' hug.
It
I know,
reminds
right?
me it reminds me of a peacock.
A little bit.
And I think it's because of the wings. That wingspan just looks like it's fantastic.
But it definitely looks like one of those dragons you just kind of want to like run up to and like bury your face in its chest.
It's adorable.
He looks so regal with the collar mane made out of flowers they have.
Yeah.
And then like the flowers down the side. I give it like a little splash of yellow in there.
Yeah.
Um,
It does have a little bit of a splash of yellow.
No, this design really it spoke to me when I got near the end. I was like, oh, I gotta use this guy. He looks so cool.
He looks adorable. And just, yeah, one of those cuddly little lovers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the also that wingspan. I love that green is the initial color of the body and the flowers are the accents.
Yeah.
I love that.
He's kind of got a land before time kind of face.
Mm-hmm.
Does a little bit.
But no, so this book has, I want to say, like 20 different dragons. Like this is only 6 of them. There are many more.
Is this the same? Is this from the same book where you sent me that other one from the other
I
day?
think so.
That one.
Oh,
one is
the mushroom dragon. Yeah,
the
he's from this
mushroom
book.
dragon. It's adorable.
I had Sasha likes mushrooms a lot, so when I saw the mushroom dragon, I was like, I think I'm just gonna clip this whole thing.
Like, I would
stats
show
and
you
all,
my
and
new
just,
purse. It's just like mushroom everything. But it's adorable. I even legitimately bought a book that is a guide to mushrooms solely for a D&D character.
There is a So there's not only does this have the floral dragons in it, but it also has a few other side monsters. So things that would be friends and foes of the floral dragons, and one of them is basically a bee, some kind of like bee monster, the size of probably a medium or large sized dog, that goes
Yeah.
around and pollinates the dragons.
How would do that?
I mean, it cuddles with them, and then goes and cuddles with other dragons.
Cuddles with.
What a hoe.
I wanna say that there's art, because there is.
That's great.
This bee ain't loyal.
There's art
This
of
bee
it.
ain't loyal.
This bee's for the streets.
Yep. But it goes
No
around.
wonder it's an enemy.
Goes around pollinating the dragons, and then there's a fungus that corrupts the dragons. Kind of like how like there's a fungus that like takes over trees and stuff. There's
That's
a fungus
cool.
that if it infects the dragons, you get like this creepy, weird, undead-looking versions of these dragons. Like it has art for all of that too.
That's amazing.
So you get to see like the normal version of the dragon, and then like the corrupted side of the dragon. And like I said, this book is chock full of amazing art. So if you didn't kickstart it, I'm sorry, you should have. But also, go buy it from them. I wholeheartedly endorse it. It's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Or if you know somebody who will loan it to you, do that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a. I do really like these dragons. I will have to figure out a way to incorporate some of them into adventures going forward. Probably Feywild Adventures starting, but honestly, there's no reason they can't be anywhere else. Like,
Yeah.
just random flower field out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a dragon sitting in it made of flowers, and the adventure party's like, what is even going on here? What kind of dragon even is
What
this?
is happening?
I was like, I don't know, you have to go be adventurers, investigate it. I don't know. It's not my job to tell you what everything is.
3 days pass, they haven't left the flower field, they're just making crowns.
Yeah.
They're just making flower crowns.
Yeah, the whole time.
The DM's like, guys, we've been here for like 3 days.
It's like, we made friends with the dragon.
But
named
we ain't
it.
friends with the dragons.
We don't want to leave. It's like you have to. The adventure still has to keep going. This is your fault. You put the dragon here.
You put the cute thing there. It's the same thing where you have so many other plot hooks and stories, and like you have these other characters that are relatively interesting, but the one goblin named Goblin the Boblin sitting at the tavern bar that was just there for no reason, the party just goes, we need to talk to Boblin the Goblin. That's what we need right now.
Boblin's my son. Alright? And I will die before I exclude him.
Like, guys, we gotta leave. Why is there a goblin sitting at the bar? Oh no.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support DMs fitting weird new things into your adventures. It keeps the players on their toes. One thing, because some people like to memorize stats, and it's annoying. But otherwise, you don't want your players to be like, oh, that's the blue dragon. We know what blue dragons do, or oh, that's this dragonborn. We have a general idea of what's going on. You're like, I don't know, man. This is a weird thing. This is a cherry tree dragon.
I've intentionally thrown off colors just to throw off players and stuff like that. They're like, oh, it's just a white dragon. Well, actually, it's not exactly a white dragon.
It's an albino green dragon.
Yeah, it's like it lives out in the cold, but it's an albino red dragon.
Yeah. It lives in the lava tubes under the frozen mountain.
It
He's
lives in a
on
volcano in the mountains.
he's on a ski trip.
Yeah, it's on vacation.
Yeah,
You're bugging him during his vacation.
he's just like, ugh, just go to my
Some-
secretary. These aren't my work hours.
Someone sent to kill the white dragon. They find him. He's like, no, you wanted my cousin. Just shows the cousin with a dunce cap somewhere on top of the mountain.
But
You
anyway,
wanted him.
so yeah. So wrapping this up a bit, any final thoughts on dragons or fun suggestions for people when it comes to dragons or dragon-like characters?
Dragons are awesome, and we should use them more.
Yeah, dragons do not get used very often
In,
anymore.
in
There's a lot
Dungeons
of
and Dragons.
yeah.
Yeah,
They've become such a staple that people don't use them too much. I think for fear of like redundancy or something. But dragons are great asset to have in your games or have as your character or something along the lines where you can just have your own unique way. And since they've kind of paved the way for different types of dragons and different types of dragonborn, even different types of kobolds at this point, like you literally, it's kind of the sky's the limit. So use it, use them to your advantage. It's a lot of fun. They're just fun creatures that are they're just revered and feared in everything, in both in D&D, in storybooks, in history, and everything. They're just wonderful creatures.
I'll say the same thing that I said at the beginning of this podcast. I just think they're neat. Um, and obviously, we're not the only people. And if your players think dragons are neat, you should just absolutely use them. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons too.
Yeah, as the fourth edition pamphlet taught me, top line, dragons are cool! Exclamation point. Uh, middle line, look, dragons are very versatile creatures. There are so many different kinds of them. They span all challenge ratings of note. Uh, there's not a moment in an adventure that your party probably can't run across a dragon at some point, whether it be a friend or a foe, or just a random passerby. They don't even have to be in draconic form half the time. Some of them can polymorph into humanoid shape, and it could be a secret dragon for as long as you want it to be. Who knows? But always look to use dragons. It's in half the name of the game. Uh, if you're not using dragon like 50% of the time, I don't know. Maybe you should try. It's fun. And then bottom line is a lot of text nobody wants to read unless you want to get really pedantic about it. So use dragons. They're fun. They're cool. Nothing wrong with a good dragon. But with all that said, we should probably wrap this one up. We're getting near closing time on this one. To remind, if you happen to enjoy what we do and would like to see more of it, we're going to continue to do these as we have about once a month. We do have a actual live play series that has kicked off or will kick off at the beginning of the month next week, right?
yeah.
Fia, you're in that one.
Yes, we are doing Keep on the Borderlands. Very excited about that one.
Yeah, we got a little bit more production value on this one. We're edging ever closer to being like really cool. But yeah, we had actual like special made music for this one for the intros and stuff, and it looked really nice. And so definitely, I think was it going to be Mondays?
Yeah,
Mondays going forward
at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Mm.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that. Definitely watch that. I will be looking forward to it. I've not been through a Keep on the Borderlands adventure in a very long time, and I'm excited to see how it got updated to 5th edition for this and how everyone kind of plays through it. But otherwise, if you like what we do and want to hang out with us, you can come hang out with us on our Discord. Links are down below, both here in Twitch and in YouTube, where this will be posted later. If you happen to have a sub that you want to throw our way, it definitely helps us out, both getting some monetary gain to put together even cooler material. Other than that, if you happen to have a Twitch Prime subscription or Amazon Prime subscription, you get a free sub you can throw out. If you haven't used it and you want to send it our way, that's cool too. Otherwise, we have various social medias that we hang out on, or at least post to on occasion. Your Instagrams, your Twitters, those such places. I think we even have a Facebook, maybe? Question mark. I don't know. It's been a while. Anyway, all those links are below. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're all smart people. I trust you. But again, if you want to hang out with us on the Discord, feel free to. If you like what we do and hang out with us enough, we're always looking for more participants for various things. We are pretty open here for the Tavern Talk. Anyone who wants to chat with us, we're more than welcome to kind of begin accommodating that if there's interest. So other than that, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you all next month. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.